there's a lot of wisdom in this pod, and maybe you are like 80 years old like I am. So that's what it
How
came
no?
out to be.
How old
So
are you? How old are you? How old are you?
we're gonna go over that later after the recording.
That's
So
offline.
find me on
No
Threads.
shame. I'm like, I have no shame. I'm gonna be, I'm an old lady. I'm okay with that. I live that. Like, I have that badge. I'm cool with it.
I'm old too.
I'm an old lady.
But people
I
need
don't know.
people don't need to know
I
our
don't
number.
know.
Go ahead and close it out,
said-
Phil. Close it out,
Oh,
Phil.
you can find the. You can... All right, let me compose. Welcome back, Pushin P fam. We got a awesome episode in store for you today. JT and I sat down with one of our friends, Amy Nguyen, to talk about a ton of really fun stuff. Fun conversation with a passionate coach. Amy just recently opened her new facility in North County, San Diego, MVMT Collective. But she's got a background coaching CrossFit, corporate wellness, strength and conditioning. She's got a master's degree in ex-phys and nutritional scientist, NSCA, CSCS, USAW, kind of the whole gambit here. So JT, what do we get into in this convo?
Yeah, no, it was a good convo. Shout out Amy. Appreciate you jumping on. A lot of wisdom in this, in this episode that I took from, that I know a lot of coaches will take away as well. But we talk about her background, her leap from corporate fitness to opening up a new gym. And then we talk about the gym itself, MVMT Collective, and the social health and the social fitness part of it. It's a new buzzword going on these days, but I think the fact that what she's doing out there is really special. And then, you're going to get a lot of good nuggets from it. Just learning about community, her passion comes through in the episode. So
yes,
really hyped up about it.
Amy, I've been I been looking at your Instagram, and that sounds so weird. That's just such a rough start to the show. That's
every
just
day.
such a tough start. I've been watching you on Instagram. Like, oh, sick. That's weird as hell. But damn, look how you've been putting in miles on the road running. Is that what's going on? Is that a new thing? I know you've been weightlifting.
It's so funny.
What's happening?
It's so funny because I think people who only know me in the CrossFit space are like, what is she doing? But actually, prior to CrossFit, that's all I did. I actually ran a lot of endurance stuff. So I did half marathons, ultra, and that was my background prior to CrossFit. And that's what I loved doing. I was like this big and like had no strength at all. But that's what I loved. And then I got into CrossFit and I stopped running.
Wow. Oh, so you threw down an ultra.
I did the Mount Tam 50K.
Wow. That was
like
I had no
over
that's
10 years ago. That was like a while ago. It was over 10 years ago.
So then what about CrossFit drew you in? How'd they get you? How'd they hook you?
Funny enough, and it's going to be kind of embarrassing to say, but I was watching, it was like ESPN, and it was like the other ESPN channel, right? So I saw the CrossFit Games, and I saw Annie Sakamoto. And Annie Sakamoto is this tiny little like Japanese lady, and she was so badass. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Hell yeah.
And that's literally what got me in. Yep. That's what got me into CrossFit.
She was NorCal too, right? She was NorCal.
CrossFit Santa Cruz.
Yeah. No, Annie, absolute legend. That's probably around the same time I got into it. Mine was super similar. I was watching a regionals video of Dan Bailey. And if those listening don't know who Dan Bailey is, that man is built like a brick shit house. He's like 5 feet tall, jacked as hell. His shoulders are bigger than my head. And he was doing handstand push-ups, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And that just sucked me right in the crowd. I was like, hell yeah, I'll sign me up for CrossFit. Sign me up. That's awesome. So that's wild. Like thinking about going back into running, how's that transition's been?
It's been good. So the reason I got back into it was we had a bunch of members at the gym sign up for the Carlsbad Half in January. And I committed to doing it with them to try to keep everyone accountable, keep people motivated. And so it was a journey getting back in. I felt like I broke my body for a minute too doing that because I was still trying to do weightlifting at the same time, right? So I'm still trying to compete. I have a meet coming up actually at the end of April. So trying to add in running during that short period of time when I decided to sign up for the race, it was like trying to do everything at once. So that was a lot. Finished the half marathon, and I've just been maintaining it because it's been nice to keep up some of the running. I like the way running makes me feel. As much as I quit doing it just because I like Olympic lifting a lot more, the feeling I get from running is like the part of what keeps me going.
Damn, that's cool. It's funny. We actually just recorded an episode. It's going to come out after this one, talking about eating at your own restaurant, right? And doing the training that your members are going through. So, jumping into a half marathon training with your clients. How like, what's that learning experience been for you? Is that something that your members like forced you to get into? Not force you, but like talk you to get into, or was this your idea? And how did that whole experience go for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was actually 2 women who signed up originally on their own, and they were kind of talking about it, and they networked together in the gym, like it happened organically. And then fostering that, more people kind of started talking, and I kept talking to other people to see if they were interested in joining that group. And so then for me, it was like putting my money where my mouth was. I was like, let me sign up and do it with them. And so then we got a group of us together, and it was trying to keep everyone also training together. And that's how our run club kind of organically happened too.
Nice. Okay.
When
That's
you
really
say
cool.
you like the way running makes you feel,
Yeah.
what do you feel?
It's more like the emotional. So like, and it's part of it is when I first started running, a lot of it was like meditative for me. It's like you go out there, you're solo, and you're hitting miles, and it's kind of my spot to zone out. I like listening to podcasts. Funny enough, when I run, I'm not a music person, so that's like what I keep my pace with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like mine's like the opposite. I'm just like trapped in my thoughts. It's just a scary place. It's a terrifying place to be in.
That's why we have a pod, Phil.
Yeah,
This is where
get these horrifying thoughts out for the world. But so running, ultras, CrossFit, competing in Olympic weightlifting, a lot of various things going on in your background.
It's like a lot of things I like to be mediocre at.
Still better than a lot of people. Still way better than a lot of people. I feel like the line between competing in ultra and competing in Olympic weightlifting meet is like, it's got to be a small handful of people. So have a super interesting background. How, like, what are your major influences, and like, how does all that stuff find its way into your program now?
Oh man, I mean, I've been doing CrossFit or CrossFit style stuff. I started in 2011. I've been coaching since 2013. And like coaching loosely, I would say in the beginning, obviously I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't on a daily basis. I feel like we never know. We're learning constantly.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I like to say it was like kind of the wild, wild west, right? So CrossFit gyms were like, if you built it, they will come, right? So it's like you had a garage gym, you had a garage box where it was like super, I remember my first gym was concrete floors. They never got flooring. It was like straight up concrete floors, and it was kind of like that very old school feel, and everyone showed up and did it, and it was great. But you also didn't know a lot then, and it was just, let's do this really intense workout. It's super fun. Everyone's like a big community group. But I've learned a lot in those years. A big part was the motivation to go back to school, right? So I'm back to school during that period of time. I'm an old person who went to school, so I finished my master's late. So I went back for food and nutrition originally with my bachelor's, and then I went to my master's program in exercise, phys, and nutritional sciences. So obviously going back to school and getting that depth of knowledge for everything, but then it's also working in different spaces. Because I think the common thing with CrossFit gyms is you don't know what you don't know, right? In any aspect. And if you're always stuck in one space in any style of programming, then you're only going to do that. And you're not going to know what else you can add value to people and what they're doing if you're not working in different environments. So I've had the luxury of like, obviously doing my internship with Exos, meeting someone as amazing as Roy Holmes, and then working at Exos in Torrey Pines, right? So it allowed me to see so many different things, meet so many different people, and learn what I didn't know.
Plus, I think Roy's a CrossFit guy himself too, right?
Yeah,
or he has a background.
He's done CrossFit. Yep.
On the low.
On the low. Shout out Roy.
On the low.
Let's get you on.
It's funny. I feel like so many people within the strength conditioning industry as a whole kind of talk down and look down on CrossFit, styles training. And I we could poke holes in the methodology, whatever. That's not, what I want to do. But I think like CrossFit coaching for me, I think has moved the needle in my career personally more than anything else that I've done, just because the sheer volume, the number of people I've taught complex movements. Like when you think about your CrossFit experience, you feel like that coaching has helped make you the coach that you are today in your facility?
Yeah, I mean, if you're genuinely trying to help these people move better, understand this movement, or progress in a way, and you have a group of like anywhere from 10 to 15 people, you have to be on your game. Like, you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to move around, see things, constantly running and helping. Like, I'm exhausted after an hour-long class.
Yeah. Yeah, that means you're doing it right.
Hopefully.
Well, Amy, curious, when you started that internship with Exos, like what were the biggest rocks that you started with and ended with in terms of like coming from a big CrossFit background to like learning the methodology with Exos?
I would say, honestly, for me personally, it was the way I moved when it came to some of the field work. Personally, I was not that coordinated. You can ask Roy. I was terrible with trying to do some of those drills because all I did was like snatch and clean and jerk, right? So if I'm like literally in one spot, you have me trying to do all these things running back and forth. It was more for me trying to connect those to obviously demonstrate it in a way to teach people. That's where I had a lot more difficulty. With the strength side of stuff, like in the weight room, that was not a problem for me, but it was more on the field because I didn't have this, sports performance application to things.
Yeah. I'm like, hold up, you want me to go sideways?
I'm like, what?
For what? For wait, what? Yeah, I feel that. I feel that in my heart. But you mentioned going back, getting a master's. I feel like that is something that not a lot of, especially in the CrossFit space and in the fitness space in general, like a lot of people don't do or won't do. Like, especially once you've been in your career a while, to tend to take the time, take the money, and go back and do that. So, what was kind of driving force? Because I know a lot of coaches who are on the fence about getting their masters and like, will this or won't this advance my career in the way I wanted to? What was the driving force behind going back to school?
I wanted to have some credibility with what I was doing, right? Because I think it is really important to get an education. I think if we could all obviously afford to time-wise, financially, there's no regret to getting an education, right? The number one thing though, and like I can cuss on here, is like I really didn't want to fuck anyone up. Like my thing is I really care about people and I want to make sure I know everything I could know to make sure that I was not going to mess anyone up. Because my biggest like scare in any class is if someone injures themselves. Like obviously it can happen, but I take personal responsibility, and part of that personal responsibility is making sure that I actually know the things I'm talking about.
No, I love that. I absolutely love that. And that's like in the industry for the right reasons.
Like yeah, my thing is, you have to really give a shit about people. Like we're in the service industry, if you think about it, and like we are not getting rich doing this type of stuff, right? As glamorous as it may look sometimes, like we're here because we really actually care about people. And if you're not that point, then you're not really helping anyone, and it's all for just like the outward appearances.
Yeah,
man. Let's rewind that, Phil. I need to hear it again. That thing just needs to be in my head. That's
just music.
At all
I know
times.
JT's. That's music to JT ears. I know he's getting fired up.
So Amy, with going back to school, getting your master's, and then you worked a little bit in the corporate fitness space, right? So what was that jump like from being comfortable with the 9 to 5, getting some insurance to going into just starting up your own box or gym? Like what were like the biggest things that you had in mind going into it?
Obviously, the fear and the financial risk is a huge thing because, you go into this knowing that you're not going to make a lot of money in the beginning and you're just kind of grinding to make sure it survives, versus something that's a lot more comfortable where it's that 9 to 5, you have your constant paycheck, you're good to go, right? For me, it was what I get out of being my own business, like being my own boss, right? Running my own business and being able to live my own philosophy. As much as I love where I love the people I worked with, it was something where the day to day wasn't that fulfilling, right? And so for me, it's more about what fills my cup. And I don't have to make a ton of money to do that. But what really fills my cup is like actual change for people, making the relationships and the connections. And like, that's what I wanted to foster and build in this community here.
So was it exactly what did they say? Like the first 5 years of any business, you gotta eat shit for a little bit. But what was that first, however many weeks, months, years for you to like get things up and running, or if that's like kind of where you are right now still?
I mean, I think it's always constantly there, especially in the beginning. Like, I mean, our gym right now is only about 8 months old.
Okay.
We kind of started the actual process of the location once we had it in like May of 2023. Um, the conceptualization of this whole thing was like probably early 2023, like the beginning of the year. It was one of those things where working corporate wellness is great. It's comfortable. And I think there's a lot of upward growth you can have if you really want it, right? But for me, it was one of those things where I felt it wasn't as meaningful as I wanted it to be, right? And so the day to day of kind of answering to specific people for appearances or trying to do this just because you need to do this. And like, I just hate busy work. I hate busy work. If I'm going to do something, I want it to mean something and I want it to be effective, you know? So I'm not a big fan of busy work. And so that part of it was hard for me, to say the least. So that really kind of pushed me back into the space because originally I never thought I would open a CrossFit gym. Because the last gym I was at, actually with Patrick, my boss had closed it down post COVID. A lot of things happened. And people had asked me if I was interested in opening my own gym. And I was like, no, I don't think I want to do that because I had seen at least 2 gyms in that space like that already because I had managed 2 CrossFit gyms in my time prior to opening this. I knew how much work it was. I knew the headache and the heartache of a lot of it that I was like, no, I don't think it's for me. And I think finishing grad school, starting a new career, kind of being in a different space, I felt a little empty, honestly. And like for me, I was like, what am I missing? What's that hole? And what do I need to fill it with? And a big part was the community aspect, right? I think one of the biggest things and lessons I've learned in the last couple years, even with opening this business, is we cannot do anything alone, right? We cannot go at life alone. And so I felt in a lot of ways alone. And I think for me, being in CrossFit for 10 plus years, the community space is really what drew me back in and what made me want to create my own community that meant something.
That's good. I love that a lot. With just curious with, pre-COVID and post-COVID life of CrossFit, knowing that you've seen both, what do you think is like the biggest value proposition you have now, opening up a gym, knowing that a lot of gyms has closed down? So why that's a big risk in my opinion, right? And a lot of people
For sure.
understand that because of those stats. So just curious of like, what was that a thought in your mind going into it? Like, shit, this might not
For sure.
be, you know?
Yes, for sure it was. But for me, it was one of those things. And I had a lot of great mentors. I actually talked to my old boss. He gave me a lot of really good advice. Was, what's the worst thing that can happen if you choose to do this? And what's the best thing that can happen? Right. So best case scenario, what can happen for you and what does this mean to you? Worst case scenario, okay, you lost some money, but it doesn't mean you're like broke or like don't have your house anymore, right? It's one of those things where it's like, what is the risk versus reward? And if it meant that much to me, the reward aspect of it and what I could get out of it, was far greater than the risk of like this failing. The worst thing that happens is it does fail, but the best thing that happens is I create something that I really, really love and is fucking meaningful to me.
Yeah,
Man,
I think it's a great exercise for any coach on the fence about doing their own thing, starting their own thing, whether it's online or brick and mortar or a side hustle, like that kind of frame of thought. But there's a lot of coaches out there that manage facilities. I've managed CrossFit gyms in the past. People managing corporate wellness facilities, people managing, private personal training facilities, whatever it might be. And then there's owning your own facility, right? So having done both, what do you think, like, biggest differences, lessons learned? What did you kind of glean from both sides?
Well, I will say the other side of just managing, as much as like both can be stressful in their own right? When you're in charge of a lot of things, there is an added layer of stress. The best part of being a manager is that if something doesn't go right, you do still have someone above you that you can be like, all right, I tried my best. What can I do now? Right. Now it's like, if something doesn't go right, I'm like, okay, I tried my best. I'm going to cry about it. How do I figure this out? Right.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, you having that kind of backing as someone who's an owner, it's like it's their financial risk. And, a lot of times most managers who get in that position do care just as much as an owner. And any gym I worked at prior where I did manage a space, I did care just as much as if it was my own money. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it's not, right? And here, this is definitely my own money. So
Yeah.
so there's that huge difference. As much as like you can care, as much as you can say like, oh, I care this much, I'm doing everything I can as a manager, it still isn't on you at the end of the day if it doesn't work, right? As an
But you
owner,
still walk away.
everything is on you at the end of the day, right? Like, if we worst case scenario, something happens before our lease is up, we're up on that lease, right? So those are the things you have to worry about as an owner, that like, cool, this is the reality of our situation.
Yeah. No, good to know. Like, good food for thought for folks to keep in mind. But you mentioned creating a community, creating something that you really care about, and something that fulfills you. Would you say so far ownership has been, way more fulfilling than just managing and running someone else's facility?
Yes. Because you have the opportunity to take every risk possible and see if it works out. And then at the end of the day, you go, okay, cool, I learned from this and I can keep moving forward. I've had the luxury, and thankfully flexibility at a lot of other places I worked where people trusted me to do quite a bit of that. But at the same time, there's no waiting to do it when you're the one deciding, right? And there's also pros and cons to that, because when you're the one deciding, it's all on you if it fails, right?
Yeah.
Man,
No.
I can't even manage my own life. So hats off to you, Amy, for taking all those steps. But I'm just like getting inspired right now. So I appreciate the thoughts there, because it's something I think a lot of coaches have in their head. Like, might want to own my own gym, or I don't know what to do. Might be a lot of money. Like, I think there's a lot of these questions I think people have in their heads, and questions they don't even know they could ask to as to start that. So I think that just hearing that is just very helpful for people to understand the risk. And like what you mentioned, like the reward is actually much higher than the loss of what can happen. And hopefully that could be something a lot of people can take away from that, because I did for sure.
The biggest thing I will say too, though, is as someone who's gone through this process, look into city government more than you think you need to when it comes to permitting and when it comes to like applying for stuff, because that was the biggest headache. As stressful as you think anything is managing your own business, dealing with city government for permits was probably the worst thing I've done ever, like hands down. So
Carl's bad strict with it.
So we're in San Marcos. Technically, San Marcos is actually really business friendly. It's just there's so much red tape with everything. The fact that you have to apply for a permit for the specific use for this type of location and type of building, right? So we're in an industrial building, and then with a fitness center, it's a recreational type of activity. So then the classifications are different. There's so much like stuff that you don't learn in school when you're going to school for kines or nutrition, right? That it has to do with city government and city planning that you learn throughout the processes. I've had a lot of people I could lean on asking questions, thankfully, like old bosses, my partner's boss, my contractor, but it was a nightmare. Like the first couple months of just trying to get city permit stuff and trying to get everything situated to make sure everything could pass was probably one of the hardest things. And like not obviously having unlimited resources. That's what I will say as like a small business owner. It's different when a corporation does it because they have unlimited resources to hire who they need to get everything done. But if you have a budget and you're doing it yourself and every little dime matters, it can be real hard.
Damn. That's a lot of lessons, I'm sure, right there.
I can only imagine what going through permitting is like. But it's interesting you brought up the business side and talking to city governments about getting permits for your facility. This is something JT and I talk about all the time. I'm curious to hear your opinion on business, sales, finance. Is that something that more either university programs, master's programs, certification courses, do you think they should talk about that stuff more to coaches?
I think coaches need to have a good grasp of finances in general, right? Because if you don't have a good grasp of that, then you don't even know how much to charge for your services, right? So then how are you going to charge what you think you're worth if you don't even understand what your personal finances are? right?
Yeah.
So you have to have a good grasp on like what your like monthly expenses are, all those different things, because then that gives you an idea of like, this is what it costs to hire me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like thinking about how I used to set rates back in the day, or how my manager would set rates. It was just like pulling stuff out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this feels like a good number, I guess, without like thinking about any real bottom line or business ramifications of it.
Right. Yeah, I know a lot of coaches, and they're like, yeah, I don't know how to charge my outside clients, right? And then a lot of they're like asking the wrong questions. They're like, what do they do for their job? Like, it doesn't matter what they do. Like, do you know what your personal finances
Yeah.
are? Like, that's your rate.
Yeah.
But,
And like what you're worth, right? So
yeah.
like, what are you saying you're worth? What is your time and energy worth?
Yeah. Yeah. No, 1,000%. 1,000%. I absolutely love that. Well, let's get into the actual gym. Let's get into Movement Collective. What Movement Collective is, first and foremost. I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, but the branding's incredible. Everything looks super
Thank
good.
you.
It looks sweet. I love it.
I try real
love
hard.
Is that you?
But
Yeah, like I'm basically with social media a one person show right now. That is definitely not my strong suit, but I try real hard. So
very nice.
Hey, it's a good look. It's smooth.
Thank you.
It's
so
super smooth.
I will shout out my sisters though. So my younger sister is actually the one who did the logo up here.
Okay.
So both of them do a lot of graphic design and illustration. So my sister did that logo.
That's good.
Love it.
I like it. CJT, we should have hit her up.
And shout out sis.
should have hit up sis. So what would be your elevator pitch for Movement Collective to a member or to a coach who wants to learn more about it?
My biggest thing with Movement Collective is that, and this is the reason why I chose movement. Movement is kind of almost like this general and all-encompassing term, right? Because I believe that everyone needs to move, and like, the term movement is medicine, all that stuff. Movement can look so different person to person, right? And it can look different day to day. And that's what we're here to provide, is the idea that movement does not fit a specific box. Even though like we do CrossFit here and we do a lot of different stuff, it's not like we're this specific style of training only, right? We're here to help you move. And that's why like my philosophy is like movement is for everyone. So that aspect of movement, and then the collective aspect is like the collective of the community, right? So I think that being able to share like and come together to care for yourself and care for others is the important part of Movement Collective. Like, and that's it in itself. Like the name is really what my belief is when it comes to health and wellness. It's movement is important, and like a collective community is really important.
Do you think movement is universally understood, at least from a Gen Pop or just general client perspective? I feel like maybe that's just my opinion, but just is it just exercise still? Is that like what people understand? Like I feel like there's a separation between the two, but people coming in, do people have that thought? Like, what's movement?
No, I'm sure they do, but maybe they haven't expressed it, right? Because I think a lot of people don't think of it in that context too, and that's like my way of like trying to build the idea of like choosing the word movement is that, we come here for structured exercise, but it's being able to provide people information and the knowledge to know that like I want you to move outside of here. The reason we do the structured exercise in here is how you're moving outside matters too. And to allow you to continue to move outside. I've been on my soapbox with all my members about movement breaks and that study when it comes to, have you guys read the research where basically it's like they found the perfect dose relationship to exercise and like some of our health markers, where it's every 30 minutes of sedentary time you spend, you want to spend 5 minutes of movement and you want to walk. So it's like 5 minutes every 30 minutes of sedentary time. It increases insulin sensitivity. It decreases all these cardiometabolic risk factors. It improves your mood. It decreases fatigue. But there's a whole research study on it, and they call movement breaks.
Oh yeah.
Not to take it here, but just curious how you speak to the clients who have a workflow where they need to sit down for like 3 hours straight or 2 hours straight. How do you speak to that?
Totally. And like, so I talked to them about the aspect is trying to at least get up as much as they can. And it's our work culture. The hard thing with the idea of moving more is the way our society is structured is it's all about grinding, right? And if you got to sit at work, you got to sit at your desk, you got to get this done. You got to get it done now. But the research does show, and I tell people, it actually will have you perform better and feel better, right? If you feel better, you're going to work better. it will end up helping your work situation if you get up and move around a little bit. And I ask people about just how their desk situation is, or if they're able to set an alarm to basically get up and walk to the water cooler, move around a little bit more. I'm like not an influencer for this. I pretend, I joke, but I tell people about walking pads all the time. Because I use a walking pad when I'm on my computer a lot, right? So I have one at home that, like, when I'm programming, right? Because I can be
What's
in
a
the
walking
muck
pad?
of it. So it's like a little small treadmill, basically.
Ah,
It's like a tiny little treadmill you can put under your
Like
desk,
fit
and
under
you
your
basically,
desk, yeah.
yep, it's super thin, little minimal thing that you can just walk while you're typing. Because when I'm sitting there programming or doing a bunch of admin work, I hate the idea of just sitting down doing it. So I'll stand up, standing desk, walking pad, do that while I'm doing that. So I try to tell people and sell them on that all the time. I did get a couple people asking me for that, so I'm like, go ahead, here's the link, but link in bio. But
yeah.
so I tell people, I ask, like, what can you realistically change, right? Where you are able to move around more. Are you able to take breaks where you step outside, get some sunlight? And then I do have people who will message me, like, I've been trying to do walks on my lunch break and actually convince other girls in my office, and they've been doing it with me, right? So I have some of the success stories, and it's more just trying to give people little ways to do it. And I tell them, if you can do 5 minutes every hour, 2 minutes, or 5 minutes every 2 hours, any little bit is better than nothing, right? So the more you can do it, regardless of what it is, try to incorporate it in a little more.
Yeah. Influencing, I love it. I guess
Yeah, right.
that message is probably straight to me, because I'm always trying to ask Phil, like, let's do a 3-hour straight Rogan type of episode.
He's
bro.
always
Like,
trying to record for hours, man. I'm like, JT, I don't want to talk to
sorry.
you that. I don't want to talk to you that long, bro. Also, JT be working with like computer
Let's do a movement
programmers and
break.
stuff. So he's like, how do I get these guys to take their eyes off their computer for 1 second?
I'll have to send you guys, if you haven't looked at that research study, I can't remember the name of it, but basically, there's this podcast too, if you guys want to listen. It's called The Body Electric, where they study a lot of how our bodies responded and evolved to technology and our like conveniences of the day. And then part of that podcast talked actually about how children are getting more instances of myopia, where their eyes are coning because they're staring at screens too much.
Yeah.
Right. So it's changing the shape of their eyes and actually causing vision issues because they're staring at screens all the time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something over. We'll throw the podcast in our show notes for folks to dive into, because I mean, a lot of our listeners are working with a ton of gem pop folks, and I think like what it sounds like the great thing that you're doing with Movement Collective is like, yeah, we're training in the gym, but like spending a lot of time and energy, and like it's very clear. Like, one thing that's really cool is like it's clear that this is important to you and something that you embody and actually live. And it's not just like a one-off tip that's like, hey, go outside. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, no, it's like, this is like, I give it, this matters. This actually matters. You need to do this. So I don't know. It's just really cool to see, like, yes, you have a class. Like, yes, they come in, but like you're fulfilling that responsibility to your members, like well after that class is done.
So yeah, you can see how annoying I am on Instagram, because obviously you can see when I post all the time. But like the reason I do that is to try to show people that like I'm fully committed to this, right? And it's not just showing people, but it's also like an accountability for me. But you know, I believe in moving, right? And that's why I love the idea of Movement Collective and finding your movement, and what your movement might look like day to day is different. Your movement for that day, okay, cool, you came to the class. Your movement for tomorrow, if you're not coming to class, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to take care of yourself, and how you're going to move your body, right? And so it can change all the time, but we have to be moving.
Yeah, man, that's eating at your own restaurant. Amy's
eating at your own restaurant. Tune in next week for eating at your own restaurant.
I love
I'm gonna take back. I want to re-record. Take back everything I said.
No,
this is just that. This is just that episode now. Thank you, Amy. But then let's look at the other side of the gym. So I don't know if I just like don't look at enough gyms. I feel like I'm pretty tapped in. I feel like I'd be looking at gyms, Instagram pages all the time. But I feel like your facility is the first that I've ever seen as a gym and social club that's not just like a gym that has a bar in it, because I've seen plenty of those, but like a gym and an actual like positive social club. So what made you lean hard into that aspect of your business?
I think it comes from CrossFit, so I will definitely give credit where credit is due, because I think CrossFit fosters that, right? And that's why I've been in as long as I have, as much as I may not necessarily do that training style all the time, especially like when I am competing or when I'm cycling through weightlifting stuff. I'm not doing a bunch of CrossFit workouts. I think what CrossFit has given me, one of the best things, is real meaningful relationships. And that's why I look at it that way, of the social club, because you come to actually really connect with people, get to know people, and then you create lifelong friendships. Some of my best friends are people I've met in CrossFit spaces. And so for me, because of that, I wanted to make sure that I could foster that. I had an environment that allowed for people to share in that. And from like, you guys haven't been in my facility. If you guys are ever around, you guys are more than welcome to. But just even from the entrance in, like my philosophy doing it. So like my partner, Dylan, partner in life and business. But when we first like walked the space, I had like a vision, and I told him like exactly how I wanted everything to look, because it's more of like when you walk in, I wanted to make it seem inviting. So when you walk into the space, we have our lounge area where it's like after workouts, pre-workout, people are sitting there hanging out, talking.
Oh, nice.
Right? Because I don't want it to be a thing where it's like people are shuttled in and out, and then it's just like, oh, class is done, get out of the way, right? So it's one of those things where class is done, cool, you guys can hang out in the front, finish your conversations, keep connecting with each other, get to know each other more, right? And it allows for that community aspect to grow. And so that's why I really lean in the idea of social club, is because CrossFit gyms basically are that. They just never have said it. They've just said, you know, community, right? And so to me, it really is a social club. People come here because of the social aspect of it. At least that's what I think, right? So, and that's what I do. That's what I did for the longest time when I worked at other CrossFit gyms. Because anyone can train alone, you know, and a lot of people do need instruction. Like there's a multitude of reasons people come to spaces,
For sure.
You know, programming, instruction, all of that stuff. But it's a big part of what keeps people coming back is the social aspect. And that's why I think our community is so strong is, you know, people actually want to get to know each other, or people actually want to spend time with the people they see in here.
Yeah. God, I love the intentionality of the space, because that makes me think about not even just CrossFit gyms, but sometimes gyms, like just gyms in general. Not that they're inherently uninviting, but like I can imagine a new member coming in and being like, what the fuck is going on in here? Like, this is crazy. Like, especially I remember walking into a CrossFit gym for the first time. I was like, it's dirty, it's dark, there's people in there half naked doing crazy things. And I'm like, yo, what is happening? But then
that's
I can
exactly
imagine,
the
like,
experience I had. Yep.
Yeah, right. So that I can imagine walking into like a nice lounge, people are sitting down talking. You know, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is a little more engaging.
That is definitely a nod to like obviously some of my corporate wellness aspect too, right? Because if you think about at the highest end of stuff, when you're working in a corporate fitness space, there's quote unquote unlimited resources that can allow for nicer things like that. And my philosophy coming into here was like, why can't I have that same feeling in a smaller space? Right? Because like cleanliness is huge for me. Like I'm constantly cleaning this gym all the time. It should feel clean that people want to stay here. If it doesn't feel clean, why would you want to hang out in a dirty, gross place?
Yeah. No, 1,000%. I love quote unquote unlimited resources. Amy, we both know there's not unlimited resosurces, but that's a conversation for another time. Amy and I both worked in the same location. We won't say what that is. I just totally lost my train of thought. I'm back though. So CJT, I'm messing around, get fired on one of these episodes. For coaches who don't own their own gyms, whether they're in corporate fitness, whether they're in collegiate strength conditioning, professional strength conditioning, whoever, wherever, if you're a coach at a gym, work with other people, what would be some words of wisdom for them to build a strong community?
Start with your relationships, like any relationship. I think the biggest thing is how you connect with people and like being honestly yourself, right? And so if you're not fully yourself and you're not honest with other people, like you can't pretend to be someone to be liked, right? You have to be you, right? So it's like knowing who you are and living by your philosophy, personal, professional, whatever that philosophy is, like you have to live by that and like be it. Don't be afraid to be it. And that's how you'll create the right relationships, because not everyone's going to be for you, right? But you're going to figure out who is for you. And like sometimes in obviously spaces, like if you're working corporate level, you do have to kind of change your personality up a little bit, or, you know, fit into specific boxes. But at the same time, like if you're really trying to create community or trying to find the right community, you have to be yourself, because that's how you're going to find the right space for you.
Oh my God, I like that so much. I think a lot of us fall into roles where we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and not being honest that like that this place isn't wrong. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
Like it's just not the environment that I need to be in. These are not like my people. I got to go find that environment for me, and then I can, truly reach my potential, truly do work that's fulfilling.
Yeah. And I mean, there's being honest without being an asshole, right?
Yeah,
Because like you can be you and still be like a nice person, right? So it's, you don't have to be an asshole and be like, oh well, this is just how I am, right?
100%. Man, you got me there. I had a good question.
Okay.
Shoot. I was like, yes, Amy. With what do you mean, real quick, with the word community?
Mhm.
What is it exactly that you would define that as? Because I think with coaches, at any level, some are extroverted, some are introverted. Some don't really want to be part of groups all the time. So what would you say that word community would mean for all coaches, and how can we view that?
For all coaches in like what respect? Within like the coaching community?
Yeah, relative to like when you say be ourselves, if
Mhm.
I'm introverted, I'm like, I don't really like hanging out with a lot of people. How can we still view the word community, and how is that valuable to the gym that we're in?
Yeah, I think you can still be introverted and like, protect your peace, right? Like everyone has to protect their peace. Like you can still do that, but it's in the spaces, if you are attracted to a set group of people, you don't have to be like necessarily hanging out with everyone all the time and be buddy buddy and pretend to be someone you're not. But if you share the same values, right? And if you care about the same things, you can still be involved in that community space, So it's like a collective of like shared values, and relationships. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something where you have to be out with everyone all the time. But if you share within that space those same things, then it can still be your community.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. I think because me early on in my career, I used to almost separate those two things. Like, I'm a coach. This is what I do. I train the classes, but I don't really like hanging out with people. And that was just because I would really know, my authentic self. So that's helpful to hear, and hopefully a lot of other coaches who feel the same understand that it's like you don't have to always be part of things, but like you're creating an environment of social health. If they were to, I think they coined it that in some research papers, but yeah, just understanding that and making it a gym and part of a gym, like you said, like it's not really something that's been ever done. I mean, that I've seen. I've seen like a few other gyms this year, but it's a new thing, I think, that are like really taking advantage of like the social aspect of it and making it part of the gym and not just like, hey, you can talk
Yeah.
5 minutes after, but you gotta go. I got another class coming.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are realizing, especially post like, shutdown stuff, the pandemic and everything that happened, like how important relationships are. I
Yeah.
think there's like a research study about like basically how everyone's lonely all the time now. So that's a huge part of it too. But I think coming back to your question, when it comes to like a coach, if they feel like they're a little bit more reserved, like say when you were like early on in your career, you don't necessarily have to force yourself to be into that community aspect till you feel like you're ready to, or you figure out if it's the right one for you, right? You obviously, if it's a job, have to be involved to some degree, because if you respect the people you're around and like want to, be there for them, then there are certain things that you have to do. It's just like family, right? So if you think about family, there's stuff you don't want to do with family all the time, but you got to show up for family, right? So
Yeah.
it's something where you still have to show up. You still have to show up when you need to show up, when it's important, but you
Yeah.
don't have to force yourself to do anything. And then also you can find your community space outside of like, say, the coaching community space in like a working environment. Say it's not necessarily like you're tight knit where you want to be all the time. You've got to find where that community is. That community can lie anywhere, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be within your working network.
Yeah, that's one piece of advice I've been giving to a lot of people who work remote. It's like, hey, like you don't need to find social fulfillment at work. Like work can just be what it is. It could be a means to an end, and that's okay. But like you can find purpose and fulfillment elsewhere, like through recreational sports, through hobbies, through going to Amy's gym, right? Through like all these different things, you can find purpose, you can find community. I like that you called out share values. Like we stay talking about understanding your own values as a coach, and that that leads to you defining your philosophy. But like I love that it's just a group of people with shared values. So like if you're introverted, if you're quiet, if you're shy, whatever, like we're all here for the same reason. Right? We all believe in the same core principles, and that's what keeps us tight together, holding each other accountable. I love that. Dang, well, I think I'm going to pull us in the weeds of some training related stuff, since I'm always the person who pulls us into the weeds of training related stuff. But one thing I saw just looking through your facility, I thought was really cool, made my heart smile. You start with assessment and fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of gyms don't do that, and a lot of gyms won't do that because they're afraid of what that might do to potential customers who want to just jump in and start doing stuff right away, and the coaches know that's not great for them and they probably shouldn't do that, but they're worried about how that might affect sales, how that might affect their bottom line. So I guess a little bit of a two-parter. What made you say, hey, we're starting with assessment and fundamentals? And then what does that process typically look like for someone coming in?
Yeah, no, a lot of it will definitely be my background in like how long I've worked in the space, right? I've been to a lot of CrossFit gyms. I've seen a lot of different things. I've seen a lot of different CrossFit style coaching. I've seen it all, right? So the big thing for me is like, when someone's jumping into something like that, you have no idea how they move, and you're going to throw them into a class where, cool, we're going to do 50 snatches. Right. And so you've never seen this person move at all before. You don't know anything about their background, and you're going to throw them in and do 50 snatches. That's just setting them up for failure. And, if you honestly care about people, and if you want long-term retention of your clients, you have to actually know how they move, and you have to know if there's any restrictions, if there's any injuries, if they don't understand specific aspects, and learn a little bit more about how well they are receptive to your style of coaching and cueing, right? And then also how to approach them too. And that's why the assessment part is really important for me, is because I get a lot of background information on them. We sit down, we start the assessment by just talking first, right? And so we sit on our little couch in the front, and I ask them a lot of questions about their background, their training history, what brings them in. And then I ask about, past injuries or current injuries. I also ask like what really like their goals are, and like what brought them to us, and that usually leads into a lot of different conversations. But I want to know the person, and I want to know what makes them tick, right? So that will allow me to kind of help best when I'm actually moving into the coaching aspect. From the conversation, we move on to the floor, where it's basically going through a little movement screening. It's like a very expedited in some ways, but movement screening. And it starts with a lot of warm-up stuff. So for me, it's like, how well can your body move? Like, we're doing cat-cow to move. Okay, do you have spinal flexion extension? Are you able to get into this position? Just doing some basic stuff that people wouldn't think are really like assessing certain things. But for me, it allows me to see a lot of what their body can do. Yeah. We go through the whole screening, and then we go through a little work at the end, because everyone always wants to feel like they worked, right? So then we go through a little work at the end where people usually feel like they got their butt kicked, and then I talk to them about it afterwards. And then that's where I decide, like, and let them know, hey, this is like our process to onboard. I definitely would require this from you to actually get into the group classes, just so that you're, as successful as possible and ready, so that you feel competent. So we potentially, prevent any injury risk, and that you feel like you're ready to do it. Because the worst thing you can do is take a new person who's like, yes, I want to try this. They've never done it before, throw them into a class where they feel like they don't even understand the lingo, don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And then feel kind of stupid doing that, because then they're going to go away from it going like, I didn't like that. And yeah, sure, the workout can still feel hard, but like, if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, why would you want to come back and do it?
Yeah.
Man.
And so
that's
for
so
me,
good. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm just, my brain just sometimes spits out.
No, it's okay. You stop me if you need to. But, for me, like, obviously seeing it too, from a coaching standpoint, and you guys can probably contest, when you do have a group of people and you're trying to teach something fairly complex, you throw a wrench in, like someone who doesn't know what they're doing, it changes the way you work with the whole group, because you really have to manage that person a little bit more, right? And so then just make sure they don't hurt themselves. But at the same time, like, the thing I worry about in situations where someone really just doesn't know, am I affecting everyone else in the group? Am I being a good enough coach for everyone else if my time is set here because I want to make sure this person doesn't hurt themselves, right? So then it's like, that is a disservice to everyone if you throw someone in who doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You kind of answered some of my questions within that, but looking back at your time in corporate wellness, and knowing that we as coaches in corporate wellness don't really have the luxury to sit down with everybody one-on-one, or a group even, to assess prior to going to a group class, and people just come in like because they can. How would you, or how did you have that process back, or looking back, how would you now approach that process, knowing that there's kind of like some constraints there?
Totally. And I'm like, I know how it is. Like people just show up and people show up late because they're like, whatever, I'm not paying for this. So it's very difficult in that sense. You almost have to use your resources as best as possible. So using your warm up as your movement screening, right? So whatever movements you're doing in your warm up, you're going to see, okay, this person can't get into this position. So in this workout today, if I'm doing squats and this guy can barely get his like hips down in our world's greatest position, right? What do I need to adjust? Or I'm going to probably have to watch him in these squats today. Or it's being able to kind of see, right, when you're doing your basic quote unquote warm up movements, if anything's happening that you would need to address for your movements later in the workout. And it's one of those things where it's not going to be perfect, but that's the best way to kind of screen and modify if you need to during a workout. Because especially since you can't sit down and actually go through every little movement with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like thoughts on just saying, you know what, this class is gated? You have to screen out to get into this class.
I'm all for it, but in corporate wellness, they do not let you do that. So, because funny enough, that kind of happened. I don't know if you've heard where we worked previously, or where I worked previously. There was a CrossFit class, right? And there was an incident I had with someone who I did not think was ready for the CrossFit class. And I expressed that concern to management. I expressed that concern to my colleagues, and the person still took the class because we couldn't gatekeep the class because it's in a corporate facility. You have to, you serve your clients. And so they did it, and they had a terrible experience. And then they complained about me afterwards, and ended up having to have this whole conversation about it with like, because then I talked to management, and they were like, no, I totally understand. Like, you had already approached us about the situation. We already knew. And like, you did your best. And I knew it was going to be a really bad experience for them. Right. I knew that they were not capable, and regardless of how much I adjusted, because they felt like they didn't know how to do the movement appropriately, they felt frustrated and felt like I wasn't helping them. So I knew that was going to happen. And in the corporate space, I would say it is difficult to do that. You almost have to kind of adjust what you choose to do with your groups because of that. In this space, because I am the boss, I do kind of gatekeep a little bit. I tell people, like, you can't take the class until you do fundamentals, right? And I explain to them the value of it. And most people, I will say like 99.9% of people are like, I totally understand. And like, I appreciate that. And like, let's sign up, right? So I'm honest about it. I'm like, this is what could happen, or this is how your experience could go if you don't do this.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna push back on there. I would like, I think even in the corporate space, I'm gonna do that, anyway. It doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, it's like the risk. You're literally taking care of that person, right? So if there's a way to communicate that to that person in whatever way they listen, like I think we should gatekeep. Like if
no, for
they
sure,
literally
I think so.
Hobbling in, like can't even walk, like that's our responsibility to say like, sorry. Not for you.
It's hard. It's hard because the thing is with a lot of
I'll get the heat on that one, Phil.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. But it's okay. A lot of clientele, the hard thing is, and people in general, right? So I'm not saying I'm alone in this, or like I'm not part of it, is that there's ego with it, right? So if you tell someone like, hey, I don't think this is the best fit for you right now, people get a little offended because like, oh, I'm not good enough to do this. And it's like, it's not that you're not good enough. You're just not ready for this class to be able to do it where you're going to be at a level you're not going to hurt yourself, or like you need to build up to this. So there's a lot of ego involved when it comes to people's emotions. And so that's the difficulty. And that one instance I had with that client, it was a lot of ego because there were conversations where I was like, we're probably not quite ready for this class. We need to be a little bit more consistent with this, this, and this, or this class is a little bit more complex than where we're currently at. And then they wanted it anyways. And then the experience was terrible. So but we moved on from that. I had to do the whole dog and pony, but it's fine.
which is why you have your gym now, right? You're like, if they say, let me speak to your manager, like that's me.
Like, okay,
I'm the boss. I'm in charge.
Yeah. And like that. The big part of why I'm firm on that like whole process too with the assessment is, I don't waver with a lot of what I believe is important. And I tell people, I'm like, cool, if they don't agree, let me give you some options then. Here's this gym, this gym, this gym, right? Because I'm not worried about that. I want to be firm in what I believe in and my philosophy and my values. And if it means not making that one sale, then that wasn't the right person for us.
Yeah. That's a bar.
Standing on business. Standing on business. I like that immediately made me like weirdly sad, because I thought about all the times that I've compromised my philosophy and values for like, and like that shit sucks. You know what I mean? Like, that sucks so much to do. Like, it feels really shitty to do. Because like you said, you're doing this person a disservice.
Yeah.
Like
they think they know what's best. You're doing that person a disservice. But shoot, I'm glad you're in a place, created a space where it's like, hey, this is the process.
We don't all have that ability,
because what's best for them. Yeah.
And it's, I'm fortunate being able to do this, right? But we don't all have that ability, right? When you work for someone else, you have to kind of answer to someone else. And sometimes you have to choose to do things that you may not necessarily agree with. And so for me, that's why, because I decided to put all of this into it, like, I have to live by my values.
Yeah. Dang. I love it. Well, JT, you want to try to land this plane?
I do, but I don't.
Yeah, I know.
I'm always trying to
locked in. This has been incredible.
Take this plane like around the world. But real quick, before we go into our rapid fire questions, Amy, 5 years from now, what does your gym look like? What do you want it to look like?
One, I want it to be in a different location. I think we will outgrow this. We've already kind of outgrown this location. So it'll be in a different location, and hopefully a nicer, newer warehouse. If my landlord sees this, I hope they don't. This warehouse is very old. It's like, it was built in the 80s. When we first moved in, we had issues with the roof leaking when it was raining, all kinds of stuff. So hopefully in a nicer, bigger facility in 5 years. So bigger in the sense to allow us to grow, because there are times, like, my busiest class is usually my 5 a.m. class. There have been times where I've hit capacity at 15 people, right? And we're 3,100 square feet.
Nice.
We're small, humble, but mighty space. So I want to be able to allow for more growth in that sense, and then also growth in other avenues. So in like 5 years, my goal is to have a couple other streams of revenue, because right now I'm, 99% of the coaching staff, right? So I coach the majority of the classes. I run everything else back end. I have my partner who helps me with most other things when he's not working his full-time job, because someone still needs to pay our mortgage. So he's working a full-time job. So we keep our house. And then I have two other employees. So I have a former colleague of mine, now my employee. We work together at Double Barrel. She's actually knows Patrick really well. Shout out to Ashley. She's amazing. I've known her for a long time, worked with her for a long time. We've worked hand in hand closely. Her philosophy aligns closely with mine. And so she's the first employee I knew I wanted to hire. And then we have someone who started new with us here, who has been a longtime friend and in the space. His name is Chris. And so I'm able to have those employees now, but I would like to grow to be able to obviously have a little bit more of a staff, so that I'm not the only one doing everything, to allow me to kind of manage the business as much as possible, but not to like kind of talk in circles or like random rambles. In 5 years, I still want to be coaching, right? So I may not necessarily want to be coaching every class from 5 a.m. to basically 5:30 p.m., but I want to be coaching. The reason I started this is because I love coaching. And so if I wanted to own a business, I could have started any business, but I like coaching. So I want to be coaching the rest of my life. Right. And so there's a lot of people who get into this space who I think they open a gym because of that idea, but then they realize, oh, I have so many things to do that I'm just going to stop coaching, where I'm like, that is the aspect that has drawn me in the entire time. Like, I want to be coaching the rest of my life. I don't want to be just running and managing a gym and then have a full staff under me, because I could have just run any business then. Right. So what does it mean to me, and what do I love? Like, I love the interaction with members. I love helping people. I love teaching them new things every single time. So I want to be coaching still in 5 years, but just maybe with a little bit more help.
Yeah. Okay. We love that. We feel the passion. I love it. I love to hear it. Shout out Ashley. Shout out. We love Patrick. So I'm sure he's gonna be
shout out Patrick
listening to this. Man. Okay.
They
Sorry,
got my ass fired up. I'm ready to go coach something, dog. I'm like, get my ass in the gym.
Yep.
Let me coach something.
You got it. Like it.
Speaking
you
of fire,
love it,
let's get these rapids.
Love it.
You gotta love it.
Got to. That's why we're
Career
here.
coach.
So speaking of fire, let's get these cues in. You ready for it? Rapid fire question. We only got a few for you, so.
Sure.
Because Phil wants me to land this a little quicker. So, I know you mentioned you don't really listen to music, so I'll give you two options. Top 3 artists in your playlist for music, or top 3 podcasts on the rotation. And we can Pushin P could be number 4 if you want.
Make that the 4. Our show could be number 4 for sure.
And it's not that I don't listen to music. I think because I'm playing music all day for people, like I don't really care what's playing most of the time. And I've told members before, I'm like, what do you want to listen to? Because it's all about your experience here. I don't really care. And so it ends up being random. So if you looked at my Spotify, it is so random because it is literally for the members. So that's not going to be a good indicator of what I like to listen to. But podcast wise, running what I love. So if you've ever listened to Radiolab, they're probably one of my favorite podcasts. They talk about a lot of different topics in science, but in very interesting ways. So some of my favorite runs have been listening to their podcast. Another one's going to be Criminal, which is just completely off topic. It's super random, but like interesting ones about different crimes that happen, but in a different perspective. It's not like a true crime, like murder mystery kind of thing. It's just investigating it in different ways. And they talk about the whole story behind it. So it's really interesting. So it's like almost like a history kind of thing. And then the third one is it's a therapy podcast. It's Where Should We Begin with Esther Perel. And so I love it because it's a lot of relationship therapy stuff. But the way I look at it, it's not just relationships as like husband and wife, partner and partner. It's relationships of how we communicate with each other. And that's the biggest thing I've learned from that podcast. Because when it comes down to any relationship we have, it's about our communication with each other and like also how we receive someone else's communication. It's helped me learn a lot about like how I approach people in life and like how I feel about certain things. So that's definitely like my top 3 podcasts there.
Okay. I love them. Yeah, but I've never listened to any of them, so I'm going to definitely knock those out. Next one. Alternate universe. Different Amy. Different world. She's not coaching, though. She doesn't have a gym. What would she be doing?
That's a really good question. Oh, okay, so I can give you an answer. It would actually be my younger self's like weird dream was like actually to own a bakery.
Own a bakery.
I know it fell your way.
Okay.
I'm not as good as your wife. But back in the day, I used to just bake for fun. Right. No, she's pretty good. But yeah, so that was like alternate universe me would be a bakery. And it's, what's silly is like, have you guys ever seen the movie Stranger Than Fiction?
No.
I think I'm probably much older than both of you, but
no, JT's like 50.
I'm older than I look. Stranger Than Fiction, Maggie Gyllenhaal plays this she's like this punk rock anarchist baker, and I used to always be like, that to be me.
Okay. Well, the social club's about to start giving out some bread.
I know, right? I got some treats coming out of there. I love that.
All right, last one. 2 options. What have you changed your mind on within the industry recently? Any 6 months to a year, or what have you doubled down on in terms of what you know?
I can answer both, but what I've doubled down on is honestly how important relationships are in this industry. I think a lot of, because this gym, we haven't been open that long. We haven't even hit a year. And sometimes I still have people mention oh my man, it looks like you guys have a lot of members, or you guys look like your classes are busy. You guys are doing great. That's awesome. I'm like, the only reason it's happened is the relationships I've maintained or the relationships I've gained in the last 10 plus years of doing this. It's literally relationships. Everything in life is about your relationships. So I've doubled down hard on that. It's so true. The relationships you create matter, and how you connect with people matter.
Okay.
Love that.
I like that. You said you could answer both. Did you have one that you changed your mind on?
Not necessarily. I think a big part, it's my if I could turn back the clock, when I went to school, originally I was a lot more into nutrition. And it's not that I'm not, but I think I don't like the idea of nutrition counseling because I was going to do the RD route. So I was going to become a registered dietitian. And so I didn't actually go through with the RD aspect. So I have a master's in nutrition and I have my bachelor's in nutrition. But I realized I hate counseling in nutrition. So I was like, that's probably not for me then. Okay. So if I could go back, what I wish I had done is actually gone for an ATC. I think like athletic training would have helped me a little bit more because I think working with Gen Pop to actually have the degree and ability to work with people in a manual sense, because there's things you're not allowed to do as a trainer, right? Like there are things I wish I could be like, let me show you this. I think had I done the ATC, it would have helped the population of people I work with a little bit more.
Okay.
I like that.
Interesting. Okay. Damn, I did the same thing with nutrition. That's crazy.
Right? I was like, I don't want to counsel anyone.
Yeah, this is kind of.
I'm like, just eat more vegetables. You're fine.
You're gonna be all right. Just try some fiber. I don't know. Well, damn. I mean, this has been a whole lot of fun. A ton of value in this. I know people are gonna absolutely get so much and love listening to it.
Hopefully,
so
or they're like that Asian lady is like super neurotic.
Not gonna say. But where, if people want to follow you on Instagram like I do, where can people find you?
Well, they can find the gym at Movement Collective, right? So that one I would definitely recommend following first because that one is less annoying than I am, but it's MVMNT, so the letters MVMNT .collective on Instagram or Facebook. And then my personal Instagram is Amy Nguyen, so THUYNGUYEN. But that one's much more annoying. It's much more annoying, and it's just full of me doing Olympic lifting and running, so you don't really want to see that.
That's good content. Good movement content. But all that's linked in the show notes. So if anyone wants to check out Amy, her gym on Instagram, check out the website for the gym, learn more about it. If you're in the North County, San Diego area, you want to slide through. All that information is linked in the bio. JT, where can people find you?
Yeah, CoachJT.mp3, and appreciate the time, Amy. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in this pod, and maybe you are like 80 years old like I am, so that's what it came out to be.
How old are you? How old are you?
We're gonna go over that later after the recording. So find me on Threads.
I'm like, I have no shame. I'm gonna be, I'm an old lady. I'm okay with that. I live that. Like, I have that badge. I'm cool with it.
I'm old too.
I'm an old lady.
Old too. But people don't need to know number. Go ahead and close it out, Phil. Close it out. Phil.
You can find the. All right, let me compose myself. You can find the show. You can find me on IG at Nashville. You can find the show on Instagram and Threads at Pushin Performance. No G. If you like, as always, leave us a 5-star, leave us a review, share with a friend or a colleague you think can level up. Amy, again, this has been so much fun. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
The show.
Rock with my feel, burning in the heat, roll, get a rock with my